Every signal you have analyzed in this course, I made up. That was on purpose, and I have said it so many times. You cannot check whether a method works unless you already know the answer. And the only way to know the answer is to build the data yourself. That ends now. In the next 20 to 30 minutes, across this session and the next one, you are going to download a real neuroimaging dataset, reduce it, build networks out of it, and find something true. Nobody will send you a password. There is no application form. It's public, it's free, and it takes a second. Okay. The dataset comes from a study of how the social brain develops. Children and adults watch a short animated film inside an MRI scanner while their brains were scanned. Movie watching as a paradigm is worth a sentence here, because it's used to be considered unserious. The traditional approach is to show people simple controlled stimuli like flashing checkerboards and isolated faces, because you can count exactly what happened and when. A film is chaos by comparison. But it turns out people tolerate films far better than checkerboards, which matters enormously with young children specifically. And the different people's brains follow the same film in strikingly similar ways. That last observation opened up a whole approach called naturalistic imaging. Children who cannot lie still for an hour of abstract tasks will happily watch a cartoon. Okay, let's look at the code. Basically, what we at the beginning do is to install the Nilearn or Nilearn, depending how you pronounce the package. This is not pre-installed on Colab, at least until I actually had an idea. It is not installed, so all you have to do is to use the basic package manager of Python, what you do locally, to use pip install Nilearn package. All you have to do is use the percentage mark at the beginning and ignore any, if you see any errors or warnings, ignore them. That's okay. Okay, now let's fetch our data as well. So Nilearn is an awesome package, specifically if you're just starting to begin in this field. It contains not only tools that you can analyze data, also visualize them using numerous tools it has. It also comes with numerous open source datasets that you can actually fetch freely on your notebook and start learning. What we did here exactly that. Okay, we import datasets from Nilearn and we fetch the developmental fMRI study. Just one subject because this is the introductory. Okay, and then we print out to see, okay, what are we facing here? This is one participant's preprocessed scan plus a file of confound regressors. Those confounds deserve a mention here. They are mostly estimates of head motion, and head motion is the great menace of this field. Moving your head changes the measured signal, and it does it so in a way that systematically inflates the apparent connectivity between nearby regions. There was a period around like 2012 where the field realized that a number of published developmental findings could be partly explained by the simple fact that children move more than adults. We will regress those confounds out. Keep it in mind for the next session. Okay, what we do next is, okay, we start using pandas to create a data frame from the phenotypic data of the participant we just downloaded the data from, the participant ID, age, and child, adult. Either they were a child or an adult. If you don't know how to do this, how to use pandas, I refer you to the previous session's videos, which we discussed it in more detail, and we actually use it. Okay. Let's discuss something before we move on, actually. Before we touch anything, one honest paragraph about what fMRI measures. It is not direct neural activity. It measures blood. When a region works harder, it consumes more oxygen. And the local blood supply overcompensates by delivering more oxygenated blood than is used. Oxygenated and deoxygenated hemoglobin behave differently in a magnetic field, and that difference is what the scanner sees. So this is an indirect proxy filtered through the vascular system, and it is slow. The blood response peaks something like 4 to 6 seconds after the neural activity that has caused it. Millisecond neural events arrive as a smooth bump seconds later. This is not a reason to distrust fMRI. It is the reason to know what you're holding. It answers where in the brain extremely well, but then quite badly. Like when the spike, when the activity happened, when the changes happen in the brain, when functional changes happen in the brain, very good, but when it happened, not quite. Which is quite, exactly opposite of EEG or electroencephalography, which answers when it happens, so basically this is called the temporal resolution. EEG has a very good temporal resolution, but the spatial resolution is not good. On the other way around, fMRI does it exactly the opposite. Spatial resolution is quite good, but temporal resolution, not very much. So, okay, now let's get to what we are actually doing here. A scan is a stack of three-dimensional images, one every couple of seconds, and each image has around 100,000 voxels inside the brain. You do not want 100,000 time series. Most of that is noise anyways. The multiple comparisons problem is ugly and no human can actually manually interpret it. So we use an atlas, which divides the brain into labeled regions, which we are using one called MSTL, with 39 regions, each already assigned to a known functional system, such as default network, visual network, motor network, and so on. In order to do so, we fetch the atlas we want from the data sets we just imported from Nilearn. So one import, two uses. We acquired the data from it. Now we're acquiring the atlas. And for the next ones, we're using list comprehension to get the labels out of the atlas we just downloaded and acquired, and the networks as well, and then the coordinations of the network. So we actually know which network with what label is located, where it is actually located. Okay, exactly 39 regions of 100,000 voxels. That is the reduction that makes everything possible, like more bearable. And be aware that this is a choice, not a fact. There are dozens of other atlases. They disagree about where the boundaries sit, and results can shift depending on which one you pick. Report the atlas you used in your study always. Okay. Before the signals, let's look at the anatomy. Okay, we're using Nilearn again, and we are importing plotting from it, and we are telling it to use some number of node values that comes from the length of the coordinations we just separated from the atlas we just acquired, and then we give the coordinations to the node coordinations, the node size on 40 just for visualization purpose, but after all we only have 39 regions, right? Based on our atlas. And the display mode on ortho, so because it is divided into three planes, it's more understandable visually. And then the color bar, we don't want it right now because we're not plotting any activity. We just want to see physiologically what we are dealing with. And a beautiful title. And when you do plotting.show, basically similar to what we did at Matplotlib. If you haven't watched the video about Matplotlib and plotting scientific plots and visualizations, please do so. Okay, let's see what we're doing. Each dot is one region, plotted on a glass plane from these angles, these three angles. That is the thing we're about to extract from. Okay, now the step that turns images into data you already know how to handle. A masker is what we're going to use. A masker takes four-dimensional image, which we're dealing with because an MRI takes three-dimensional image, and a functional MRI or fMRI takes in 4 dimensions, and the fourth dimension is time, the temporal. So a masker takes the four-dimensional image, averages the voxels belonging to each region, removes the confounds, and hands back a plain two-dimensional array, which we want. Again, from Nilearn.maskers, we import nifty maps maskers. Nifty is type of the data and the extensions we're actually working with, because the fMRI data comes with the extension of .nii. You can actually see it at the beginning of this course that we import, that we actually acquire the data. So still Nilearn, one package, we use it to visualize, we use it to acquire data, we use it to acquire the atlas, and now we are using it to create a mask and fit it, the masker, and fit it on our data to actually, get a plain two-dimensional array instead of a four-dimensional image. Isn't this beautiful? One package, multiple uses. Okay, now 168 rows, and 68 rows and 39 columns. Time points by regions, of course, we're doing it. That is NumPy array, exactly like session 5. Everything you learned on the toy signal now applies to a real human brain, and the transition took one function call. How beautiful. Now, so we have like 2 seconds per row, about like 5.5 minutes of someone's life has actually been recorded. Now, let's look at the real signals here. This is quite cool. Look at 3 default mode regions at the lower part, like LDMN, and emit DMN and front DMN. So basically, DMN stands for, of course, a default mode network. This is the celebrity of the brain networks, quite well known. Front stands for frontal, just the frontal part of the frontal network. Mid is the medial part, and L is basically the lower part. So we have left and right as well. So having that said, they rise and fall together. Look at this. They rise and fall together. Okay. I did not do anything to make that happen. There is no processing here that would create that. And nobody told the scanner which regions belong to which network. That co-fluctuation is functional connectivity, not a statistic yet, just a thing that you can actually see with your bare eyes, right? Like with the naked eye. One note on the units, these are z-scored, so the axis is in standard deviations. Raw fMRI intensity is in arbitrary units that depend on the scanner, the coil, and the day as well, which is why nobody ever reports that. Only the relative changes mean anything, right? Okay, now that we have observed something just by looking at the piece of the reporting that we have actually acquired, now let's put a number on it. So 2 regions from the same network and one from a completely different one, and the reason is that we are taking this. So this basically the third one that is from a completely different network, brain network, is because we're taking it as a control. Okay, because we saw on the image like the LDMN and the mid DMN, medial DMN. Look at this. Okay, we observe that they fluctuate together, like, right? Okay, now we want to acquire another one that just for control. We have seen something that these two do and one that doesn't, so we can actually compare, like numerically, statistically. Now, so basically we define A, B, and C for the time series. A will be the LDMN, B will be the middle DMN, and C from stereo from a network from visual network. So let's run it. 2 default mode regions strongly correlated. Look at this, the p-value and the r, which is the correlation value. A default mode and region and the visual region, essentially nothing, right? The LDMN with MDD and the medial DMN, as we saw, strong correlation, and the same network, the LDMN with stereo from a different system, the visual network, basically does not correlate, essentially nothing. So now we actually predicted that, what we observed here. Now we actually put a number on it and actually can predict it, because now we know that they actually correlate. It is the expected answer, and I want to be clear about why this is worth celebrating rather than boring. Every step in this pipeline could have been run. The atlas could have been misaligned, the confound file could have been mismatched, the masker could have been silently returning garbage. Getting the expected answer on the data you did not simulate is how you find out the machinery actually works. This is what the positive control is for, and you should build one into every pipeline you ever write. Basically, taking a a variable from a different group that you are not actually observing any correlations, then actually testing against it. Okay, so let's wrap up. Real data downloaded, reduced, and an atlas turned into arrays and sanity checked. There is a small exercise at the bottom. Pick two other regions and correlate them. The atlas tells you which network each belongs to. So predict the answer before you run it. Being right is the point. Next session is the finale. 50 participants, 25 children, and 25 adults. A connectivity matrix for each, a network for each, and one question decided in advance. Does default mode network become tightly integrated between childhood and adulthood? We will get an answer. It will be a real one, and it will take about 15 lines of code. Notebooks and data are free on GitHub, and the link is in the first comment, and I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next session.